Thank you, Mate. I think that was an extremely informative session, so thank you for that. And as I've been introduced, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Niveshan Govender. I am a board director at the Global Solar Council, but also the chief operating officer at the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association. Today's session, the second session today, is going to be broken up into two parts. We're going to start with a presentation from David Wiedepol, who is the acting executive director. He is the managing director, international affairs of the German Solar Association. And then we're going to move into a roundtable discussion with 7 African countries talking about the market developments and where we should move towards as African Renewable Energy Associations. So I'm not going to take too much of time. In the essence of time, I know there's a lot to cover. I'm going to hand over to David, and he's going to provide us a presentation on a market report that was done, which is entitled Solarize Africa Market Report 2020.
Yes, hello, and thank you. I hope you can all hear me. I have a bit of feedback now. I don't. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to be able to talk about this. Normally, we would have all met in July in Munich, I think, at Intersolar Smarter E. And this is normally where we present these reports. And of course, without them, this would not have been possible. So I would like to thank the organizers and also our colleagues from Becquerel who have been very, very helpful in putting this together. The report we are belatedly publishing is the second time we are doing this. We have added new markets. We can't cover the entire continent, and I'm really happy that some of our partners are online. Some of you I have seen, Enoch, also the colleagues from Nigeria and Kenya, and we're really excited to be working with you in these markets, and I'll be really interested to listen in how you are doing in this current environment. We know certainly that we are having some real challenges here, and there will be another session by Intersolar on the 10th of November to go more in depth on this report, and we'll provide the download link as well. But let me get quickly into the report. Thank you. So as you know, almost paradoxically, so far, most of the PV development has been taking place in countries outside of the Sun Belt. And I know when Solar Power Europe was still named EPIA, we did a big Sun Belt study. And as of today, we have on the continent, as far as the data that is available, less PV installed than we have in Bavaria, a German state, albeit a large one. And so really in the performance and the installation in the last couple of years, the continent has lagged behind. However, we are beginning to see more light than shadow. There were a myriad of problems that have contributed to holding the development back. You know, the basic ingredients, and David, you have already pointed to this earlier as far as the off-grid sector is concerned, are the framework conditions, is the available financing, and is the availability of skilled labor to really have a market. And the big thing we think driving the market is the growing energy demand, hopefully, even though in a pandemic, many growing economies on the continent and the growing populations. So the resources should be used a lot more, so to say. And as David has pointed to, isolated communities to off-grid, there's a big point, but also to improve the economy, become independent of high and fluctuating energy prices. And to say the least, we are seeing that a lot of things are being done better on the framework side. For instance, tenders have really improved. Financing is becoming more and more available. And overall, we are optimistic. But what does optimistic mean? We have in our report 4 scenarios we have mapped out. And now one is called business as usual if we just take all the policies that we have found for the markets we have analyzed, and then we have the business as usual scenario. And these are very similar because some of the policies we have seen are old. Then we have the third, the Solarized Africa Accelerated scenario. We think, and Becquerel is thinking this is a realistic scenario, also much in line with what Irina has predicted for the continent. But we're still talking about only 170 gigawatts until 2030. Now, I would very much say the continent as a whole and some of the countries should be a lot more ambitious. If we want to be in line with the actual demand that is there, the growing energy demand, and hopefully also the better prosperity, what we are looking at for the continent is a 600 gigawatt scenario. That may sound like a moonshot, and it is going to require some significant moves, but I think given the scale of the different markets, the continent and the demand that is there, this is not an unrealistic scenario. However, one thing I really cannot overstate is if more PV is to be installed, framework conditions David also pointed to, financing and skilled labor. We don't see the numbers for a large distribution in planning and installing and maintaining all these systems. So that's a big message. I think that's important both to lawmakers and to companies. If you want to have a market that meets your energy demand with solar, you need to start training more people now in order for them to be available for the training. So what's in our report, and we can only cover, given time, a very short, just 2 chapters I want to just barely touch upon in the report, and you can download it and read it in detail. But this is what we are having, and so, as I said, November 10th, we will be able to ask questions. There's a session and a link at the end of this presentation. But we have also the status of the energy transition. We do have regions and countries, and we have 16 countries compared with the previous year. We have added Senegal, Mali, Uganda, Madagascar, Kenya, and Tunisia to this year's report. For the other markets, it's an upgrade. We also have a ranking. I know it's always sensible to do, and I'm happy to discuss this also. And what's really interesting to me are the different business models that work, because we have learned that some of the mature markets in South and North Africa, for instance, very much look very similar from the market structure and from the business models that are there than the more mature markets, for instance, in the US of A or in the European Union. But we're also seeing leapfrogging happening. And I know this is an overstated hype word we have heard, but we actually see that happening in some of the business models and some of the applications. So the highlighted one, the off-grid market and solar and water, I'm going to briefly touch upon, looking at the time. And now off-grid, of course, is not something specific to Africa. We see it in Australia. We see it nowadays everywhere. It is economic to do. Think India, a huge off-grid market. And having an off-grid market, as David has pointed out, it's nothing that means, as a European, of course, we have our grid. We built it over 100 years ago. It's nothing to hold a country back, but it can be the most economic option. But what we are seeing, because of a lack of infrastructure in many markets, Nigeria has been mentioned, for instance, we are seeing that businesses, private entities, everyone is having diesel gensets, and this can triple the cost of electricity. We are seeing a lot of power outages depending on which region you are on, and we see huge growth potential here. The problem is and the biggest challenge to overcome, and if anybody has a solution to this, please write us an email and call us. Because a diesel, any sort of fuel-fired power station, coal or diesel or whatever it is a pay-as-you-go model. You have a generator, you put fuel in it, you pay the fuel over time, whereas with a PV system, you have to plunk down the money in the beginning to build it, and then not much to maintain it. There's just some labor needed to do that. So access to financing is really, really key. But what we have found in our analysis is that in markets where there is existing diesel gensets, if you complement them with a PV system and batteries, you can usually finance, unless the diesel is subsidized, you can usually finance the PV system with the diesel you don't use. And we think this has a huge market potential. We are seeing a lot of commercial and industrial users switching to solar and battery, along with cheaper energy. We are also seeing power quality. If they have machines that are being damaged by brownouts or downtime that they have, their staff can't work because there is a power outage. There are some examples that we have seen in the market report. For instance, in Ethiopia, there is an aim by 2025 that 35% of the population should receive electricity via such off-grid solutions. In Angola, there is a plan to build 30,000 systems and 500 solar villages, and Nigeria was already mentioned, plans to install 10,000 mini grids with a World Bank loan. So I think this has a huge market potential. The key is financing, but the key is also labor if you want to install all these systems. Let me switch to what to me was really the new kid on the block. And I know for some of you this may be older news than for me, but we have seen and experienced that, you know, for in some parts of the world, energy generation also always means desalination. And apart from, you know, food supply, water supply is so essential together with energy for development. So there's a lot of people who still don't have access to clean water, and solar really is on a small scale and on a large scale can be part of that solution. We have seen the water source shortages in mega cities like Cape Town, where it is seawater, but we also have the challenge to have salinated water sources only even inland. So given why is this happening now in the market? The reason is solar has become so cheap that it's an abundant form of energy to clean water, to disinfect water, or to desalinate water and make the availability. So we have it both in the treatment of the water as well as in the transportation. Even large infrastructure water pipeline systems can be run with PV generation stations. The pumping stations can be run if there is a large infrastructure. I'm just looking at the time. So you will find all of this and more in our Solarize Africa Markets report. We focus both on the different markets and on the technology and market segments, on the business models. I'm also very interested to hear from our colleagues from the countries to see how the development is. If you are interested to go more in depth, also with Becquerel and Intersolar, please join us on November 10th, and you can also already download the report. It's available as of today. So thank you, and if there is some time, then I would love to take some questions.
Thank you very much, David. I'm just going to switch your mic on because of the feedback. So thank you very much, David. I think that's a very useful and comprehensive report. I look forward to going through it myself, and I look forward to sharing it with the South African colleagues so we can make sure that it is actually used in the African context. So thank you for that. For those participants that are on the call, if you do have any questions, please can you use the chat function and post your questions. If there is time permitting at the end of the session, I will take those questions and pose it to the speakers, if that's okay. Perfect. Thank you, David. For now, I'm going to ask for the rest of my colleagues from the African countries that are joining the round table to please join me. We have representatives from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Zambia, Nigeria, Ghana, and Tanzania. And of course, I'll be representing South Africa. So it's 7 countries across Africa that are going to give us market updates and a little glimpse into the future of solar PV here in Africa. So as you've heard throughout the day, and I'm sure yesterday as well, Africa is indeed the next solar PV destination. There are vast amounts of opportunities across the board, but this is not without the various challenges that each of us are facing within our countries and in Africa as a whole. And these challenges range from policy and political will to enabling regulatory environments in our countries, to skills development and capacity building, right down to localization and industrialization. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about this in today's session. And there is a step change that is required by each of us in our countries and collectively to exploit the opportunities that are available to Africa. So from my side, I'm honored and extremely excited to moderate this session. It is an African country focus and roundtable with 7 African countries. We've asked each country leader to prepare 2 slides or a quick introduction to your country, talking about the status quo of solar PV and a little bit about the future. I'm going to start from a South African perspective and just give you a quick update, and then we'll move according to the list. You just give me a minute to pick up my slides. Good. So SAPIA is the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association. We represent just under 400 companies here in South Africa across the value chain of solar PV. This includes manufacturers, developers, IPPs, all the way down to residential installation companies. In terms of where we are, the solar PV contribution here in South Africa, we have about 2.3 gigawatts of utility scale has been procured by the government. 1.5 gigawatts is already installed. There's another 800 somewhat megawatts being constructed. I believe this is an outdated number. We've seen, I think, about half of these projects already come online over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So things are moving very quickly, and these construction projects are coming online very quickly. On small-scale embedded generation, this is generation for self-use or distributed generation. We have estimated the South African market to be just over 1 gigawatt of installed capacity, and this is through commercial, industrial, and residential application. Residential accounting for just under 20% of that number. In South Africa, Black shareholding and ownership is a big indicator for us. So we have achieved to date 40% Black shareholding and ownership in these projects. So we're very happy about that, and we want to increase that as far as possible. The job creation that we've created through construction, operation, maintenance, and ongoing services is about 25,000 here in South Africa. We've seen cost reduction in solar PV over the last 8 years. We started off in the first bidding round, I think, over 4 South African rands per kilowatt hour. We now sit on an average cost of about 1 rand 1 cent. South African rands in terms of cost per kilowatt hour. We've already seen 80 billion of investment in solar PV, and this is foreign direct investment as well as local investment. The generation capacity of solar is able to power 1 million average households here in South Africa. Average lead time is between 12 and 18 months to build a utility scale project. A glimpse into the future. So the future energy mix in South Africa has been announced late last year, around October 2019. We saw the integrated resource plan in South Africa come out, and this is what it looks like. So this shows you exactly what our energy mix looks like for the next 10 years and what is planned to come up. You would note that renewable energy, solar PV and wind, takes the lion's share of this energy mix going forward. So in 2030, we would expect 40% of our energy or electricity generation to come from renewable energy. You will see wind has a lot of focus in the next 10 years, consistent procurement year on year. Solar PV, not so much consistent, but there is about 6 gigawatts of utility scale solar PV coming on board. And if you look at the last pink block, it's a distributed generation block. Our energy planning has never taken this into consideration previously. We've now seen that they are taking embedded generations, distributed generation more seriously, and we have an allocation within our energy mix for that kind of generation facilities. In terms of where we are, the government has already made bold moves. So they have determined procurement up until 2024. So the 2 gigawatts of PV utility scale will be procured end of December or beginning of January. We'll see an RFP come out. And they've also procured 2 gigawatts of emergency procurement energy from a range of technologies. CNI and residential is continuously moving. So that is my quick update from a South African perspective. I am trying to close that. Oh, good. I'm going to go down the list and ask my colleagues from across Africa to also just give us a quick update on their countries. So I'm going to start with Isaiah. Isaiah is the chairperson of the Renewable Energy Association of Zambia. So Isaiah, if you could just provide us with your feedback.
Isaiah is the chairperson for Zimbabwe, not Zambia.
Yes, sorry, my apologies, Zimbabwe. Isaiah, you're still muted, if you can unmute. You're still muted, Isaiah, if you can please unmute your mic. We still can't get you. So while we wait for you, Isaiah, to get your mic working, can we move on to Ricardo? Ricardo is the president of...
It's now working, huh?
Okay, there we go. There we go.
All right, okay.
Thank you, Isaiah.
Right, I'll just share my screen. Thanks very much, Nivishan, for the introduction. It's Isaiah from Zimbabwe. And I'll just quickly share my screen. You can just bear with me. I hope you can see my presentation. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, we can see. I can see it from here, Isaiah.
Okay. Oh, you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Right, so the name is Isaiah Nyabusendo from Zimbabwe. I'm the chairman of the Renewable Energy Association of Zimbabwe, and I'm glad to be presenting at the Global Solar Council Forum. We thank them for the invitation. Now, I represent a Renewable Energy Association, which is a voice for the private sector, people in the renewable energy sector. A brief rundown as to the background in Zimbabwe. We have an estimated population of 16 million, with 68% of them living in the rural areas. Our electrification rate is around 40%, with the rural areas being 19%. The bulk of our people use fuel wood for cooking, lighting, and heating, which is about 63%. So out of the total energy supply, 70% is from biomass. We have an installed capacity of 2,342 megawatts, 55% of that comes from thermal and 45% from hydro. And our main hydro source is through the Kariba Dam, which is shared with Zambia. And we have seen the challenges of reliance on hydropower because of the climate. In 2019, we had challenges in as power generation, which saw the country actually generating or rather having load shedding in some cases for 18 hours in a day. Generation is currently around 823 megawatts against a winter peak demand of 1,600 megawatts and the summer peak demand of 1,400 megawatts. Taking into account, the population growth, industry growth, there has been projection through to 2037, where we targeting to have power generation of about 22,468 megawatts. We have key stakeholders, basically driven by the Ministry of Energy and Power Development. We have an energy regulatory authority. We have the single electricity and distribution and transmission organizations within the country, which are driven by Zimbabwe Electricity Supply Authority with its subsidiaries. And we also have a rural electrification authority. And then the private sector is there also complementing what government is doing, and we have an association through RIAS, which I represent. As of 31st December 2019, we had 40 projects of 1,190.88 megawatts, which were licensed, and only operational were 5 of the projects, which are generating less than 10 megawatts. I think the reasons for it have already been alluded to by the previous speakers. I think the issues to do with access to finance, developing projects, bankability come into play as well. Technologies that we use, we have mini hydros, mini and micro solar grids, rooftop, ground-mounted carports. We also have waste energy, mini hydros, and solar home systems. We have a national renewable energy policy, which aims to have a renewable energy capacity of 1,100 megawatts. This excludes large hydros, or 16.5% of total electricity supply, whichever is higher by 2025, which present opportunities for investors who want to come into Zimbabwe. We also have an Electricity Act, which gives the Energy Regulatory Authority the power to license, projects for those that want to go into generation, transmission, and distribution. Currently, we talk about those projects which are in excess of 100 kilowatts, but this is to be reviewed to 1 megawatts. We also have net metering regulations in the country. We're one of the few countries in the SADC region who actually have net metering regulations. And anybody who is a participant on the generation, or rather paying electricity in the country, can also participate in the generation through their own roofs, whether it's commercial, industrial, or residential. We also have targets to reduce our emissions by 33% by 2025, and is anchored 43% by renewable energy. We have policies that are now being implemented, the renewable energy policy, which was launched last year. And in there, we have competitive bidding processes, which are also going to be part and parcel of the way forward. Net metering regulations are mentioned. We have been lobbying for duties and VAT to be removed on renewable energy products, and energy efficient policy, e-mobility framework, low emissions development strategy that has also been crafted last year. And then we have developmental partners who have been coming up with projects to kind of come up with financing structures for the sector. I think with that, I would like to thank you for listening to me. I'll take any questions afterwards, after my other colleagues have presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isaiah. I think it was very useful to see how Zimbabwe has progressed over the years. I'm going to move on to the next speaker, Ricardo. Ricardo is the president of the Mozambique Association for Renewable Energy. So Ricardo, if you can bring up your slides and present. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Perfect.
we can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Niveshan. Thank you, Global Solar Council, for this opportunity. And I'm very happy to be here with all the colleagues. I'm going to share my presentation. Please let me know if you are able to see it. And you can see it?
We can.
Okay, great. So I will be very quick. So I will start by saying what AMER is. So AMER is the Mozambique Renewable Energy Association. I am the chairman of that association, and it was first created in 2017. We are representing all the sectors in the renewable energy market. So we are a private sector organization, but we are representing all technologies in that sense. So, and we have an objective, which is obviously to represent the interest of our members, to promote the awareness and dissemination of renewables, and also to become a bridge between the different decision bodies in Mozambique. So be it government, be it donors, be it the private sector itself, and obviously to promote and facilitate renewable energy projects. So we definitely see ourselves as an institution that can create these links, and we've been doing so very well in the last few years, and more so now with this pandemic, where we have launched a series of webinars that have been discussing very specific points, from the impact of COVID to mini grids, and the new one will be coming on the IPPs, where we've actually managed, because the truth is that now people are a little bit more available online and so on, we've actually managed to get on the same platform, such as this one, members of the private sector, members of the public sector, and donors to speak to one another. So in terms of the solar market in Mozambique, very similar to what has been said through yesterday and today, I guess Africa is, and Mozambique is no different to the potential. So the from a radiation potential, from an estimated potential of projects, is significant. I have two maps there. The one on the left, which belongs to the Renewable Energy Atlas, that was actually done by FUNAI, which is the Fund of Energy, and it was as a tool for attracting investors into the market, and to give an overview of what the irradiation and potential is. And then the map in the center are actually priority projects, solar priority projects in the country that are being considered. They are, to the extent this atlas considers, to the extent of over 100 projects on the solar market, being on grid and off grid, and of different sizes. So the different size circles that you see there are installed capacities between 5 all the way to 10 and 100 megawatts. So there's this, as you can see, there is significant potential. These are all projects. The ones that have been implemented are in the center, which is in the province of Zambezi, called Kwamba, and that was a project led by Skatsek Solar, a Norwegian company, and it's called the Mukuba project. And now, after 2 days ago, we had very good news that the second project was just inaugurated also by the president. It's in construction already, which is the Metodo project. Both of these projects are 40 megawatt solar grid-connected projects with signed PPAs, and so the market opportunities are both on-grid and off-grid. There are a number of programs in Mozambique that support these initiatives. We have, similar to what's happening in Zambia and in Uganda, and GetFit. GetFit is also in Mozambique now. We have ProLair, which is a tender process for large scale. It has just been launched now for 30 megawatts in Dondo, which is in the Beira province, in Beira City, close to Beira City. We've been having a revision, and Ahmed is also part of that, a revision and simplification of the regulation. The regulation in Mozambique, and let's say, has not evolved as quickly as we wanted for the renewable energy, but we are now working on that, on simplifying processes, on simplifying licenses, and I guess one of the biggest opportunities that we have there is that there is still space for everyone. We are not in a position where the market is saturated. We are not in a position where there's too many players. We are actually in a position where the market is quite small, and there is space for different players to still come in. I think that in a very succinct way is what I would like to put out there for the Mozambican market. We as a MED, not only do we want to serve our current members, but we also want to serve as a bridge for anyone wanting to come into the Mozambican market. So because we do provide guidance on member needs, be it understanding the regulatory framework, be it understanding doing market needs assessment, and understanding what's the market potential, and also being it networking both with private sector and also public officials. So we support a lot of this and initiate a lot of the discussions with government and local partners, and obviously collaborating with wonderful institutions that we have here, and also international ones. And I think that's it from my side. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take questions, and I'm very happy to engage in this forum.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. I'm highly impressed by your atlas, so thank you for that. In South Africa, we've been struggling to map out all of the projects that we have, so we're now trying to embark on that activity. So I'm glad to see someone in Africa is doing it and doing it well. Thank you for that. I'm going to move on to our next speaker, Geoffrey. Geoffrey is the chairperson of the Solar Industry Association of Zambia. Geoffrey, let me apologize upfront for my mistake earlier in switching Zambia and Zimbabwe, but you are welcome to share your presentation and your introductory remarks.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, participants. Thank you to Global Solar Council for this opportunity to give me this chance to share the Zambian experience of solar industry. Let me start by sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not your presentation yet, we can see your screen.
Okay, let me do the presentation now. You can now see my presentation?
Not yet. We still see your screen.
Can you see it now?
No, it's still not up on my side.
I've clicked to share, but
You will have to open up your presentation on your screen.
that's what I did. Okay, there. Can you see it now?
No, still not. If you're having troubles, Kun has your presentation. Do you mind if she shares it for you? And you can just ask her to go through it.
Yeah, I think that'll be quick.
Thank you. Kun, if you can bring up the presentation, please. Geoffrey, if you can stop sharing your screen. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Hello there. I'll start presenting. I'll share your slides in just a second. If you want to start speaking, then I'll have them up in just a second. Okay.
Okay, fine. I'll wait for that.
Thank you, James. Here we go.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Can we go to the next slide? Next slide. Next slide.
Okay, tell me the slide number because it takes a few seconds between you saying it and it happening. Okay.
Okay, the fourth slide. Okay, good. Okay, this is where I'll start from. I'll just give you the country overview. Zambia is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, and it's one of Sub-Sahara's most highly urbanized countries. And Zambia is the second largest copper producer in Africa after DRC. The country is highly dependent on copper, which generates 3/4 of export earnings. And our GDP now is about 23.34 billion US dollars. The country has a population of about 17.5 million people. On the political scene, Zambia has been a democracy since 1991. Since then, Zambia has been relatively stable, having consistently and peacefully transferred power between three political parties. That's the UNIP, MMD, PF, and has been, since 1991, held 8 presidential elections, of which 6 were general elections. Next slide, please. The energy sector situation, we have a sector made up of electricity, petroleum, and renewable energy. The primary sources of energy include hydro, coal, biomass, petroleum, and solar. Electricity is produced from hydro sources, coal-fired plants, heavy oil fuel plants, and diesel power stations, and a little bit of solar photovoltaic plants. The chart down there shows you the distribution. We are predominantly hydro, and solar is about 3%, and not as shown there, which is 0.04%. We've moved up to 3% now. Next slide, please. The electricity sector has the following major players. We have the Zambia Electricity Supply Corporation as the main electricity utility company, followed by the Copper Belt Energy Corporation. Then we have a small bulk buying and distributing electricity company, which is called Northwest Energy Corporation. Then we have a lot of small IPPs, which are operating small hydro plants, including heavy fuel power stations, and some diesel. And we have a lot of small companies operating in the off-grid space. Some of them are mini-grid operators, including the company that I run. We have several other small solar companies, mostly on the retail side, who are retailing solar equipment. Zambia has about 2.98 gigawatts of installed electricity, most of which is hydro, about 8%. And the national access sits at about 31%, with 67% of the urban areas and 4% of remote places, mostly villages. Now, due to climate change, effects of climate change have made hydroelectricity generation to reduce. The government, in line with the objective of national energy policy of 2019, is targeting the exploration of renewable energy in order to diversify the energy mix. Next slide. Okay, in order to diversify the energy mix, Zambia electricity generation mix, and addressing the current power deficit the country has been experiencing over the past few years, the Ministry of Energy and KFW are implementing about 120 megawatts of grid-connected solar projects under the GetFit program. The results of the GetFit program tender set a new benchmark of solar PV tariffs in Zambia, with the lowest success bid at about $3.99 per kilowatt hour. The Ministry of Energy and GetFit Zambia are also requesting for proposals for 100 megawatts of small hydro projects. The energy regulation, with the help of European Union, have developed and published off-grid mini-grid regulations under the Increased Access to Electricity and Renewable Energy Production Program. So these regulations are now in effect. So any developer for mini-grids will have to use these regulations. The mini-grid regulations include licensing, grid encroachment. Grid encroachment here is an interesting aspect where if you develop a mini-grid in a remote area and the national grid arrives, the regulations have set out what should happen. The tariff approval is in the regulation, and the technical requirements for the three categories of mini-grids, which are 100 kilowatts, up to 1 megawatt, and more than 1 megawatt. So those are the three categories in the. And in 2019, under the scaling solar, 2 solar power plants were commissioned, one at 54.3 megawatts and another at 34 megawatts. This program is targeting up to 600 megawatts. So we've not done much, so there's still a lot of scope there. Thank you. Next slide. Renewable energy business models. So in Zambia, largely we have the utility scale projects, which are doing their business via PPAs. Also, they're including the operations and maintenance with the off-takers. We also have commercial and industrial solar. Mostly these are behind the meter connections without any feed in, because we don't have any net metering or such rules to allow rooftop solar to feed solar into the grid. So the business models there are operations and maintenance. We have PPAs or just outright purchase. There are off-takers who are just buying off the whole plant. We also have mini-grids. I've talked about the regulations. Their business models here are either simple supply agreements or pay-as-you-go via the prepaid meters. Then we also have the small solar home systems, companies that are distributing via pay-as-you-go or rent-to-own business models. Next slide. These are some of the upcoming events that you could be interested in. I'm sure now you've heard about Beyond the Grid Fund for Africa. I think it's closing about now. If it did close yesterday, maybe it's today. Then we also have Power Africa Off-Grid Award announcement, which happened last month. Alliance for Rural Electrification is planning Energy Access Investment Forum, first quarter of 2021. We hope this happens, and looking forward to this. Now, in line with the energy policy that aims to promote cost-effective tariffs in the electricity sector, the energy regulation has launched a cost of service study. This will determine the actual cost of electricity in the country, and after this is done, I think the electricity utility companies will now have to cost their electricity so that they are cost reflective. And the government has also launched a national energy policy, which is a 2019 document. This document sets us to outline government's intentions to develop the energy sector. New investors are encouraged to acquaint themselves with new policies and regulations before starting project development. Next slide. Thank you, and that's all I had.
Thank you very much, Geoffrey. I'm going to move on very quickly to the next one in the essence of time. Next up, we have Segun Abuja, who is the president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. Segun, are you ready with your presentation?
Yes, I'm ready. Let me share my screen. Let me know where you can see my screen. So while it's sharing, I'll myself. Yeah, Renewable Energy Association, an organization that has over 100 members currently, and also run in Nigeria. The Nigerian market has become very interesting, and one of the fastest growing in terms of renewable energy in sub-Saharan Africa. Interestingly, the gap between energy demand and energy supply also seems to be one of the highest. So out of the 500 people in sub-Saharan Africa that are off-grid, as mentioned by David from Korea, about 100 million in Nigeria. Slides now. Can you see my slide?
It's coming up.
It's taking some time because I'll just begin to talk through it. So we have about 100 million of the population not connected to the national grid. The energy generated currently is average of 5,000 megawatts, and 80% of this from gas, which is thermal, and then 20% basically from hydro and other technologies. Also, Nigeria has made some efforts in terms of developing the renewable energy sector. We also had David, I'll make reference to his presentation from Ari about the Nigerian electrification project, which is scaling and fast developing mini grids and solar home systems in Nigeria. And we also see mini grids being rolled out pretty very fast. There's been some to develop on-grid solar projects. So we have about 14 companies that have been licensed. However, they're still working towards a financial close and also developing projects.
Segun, if I can interrupt you, if you stop sharing your screen, I'll put your slides up and see if I can manage for you, and you let me know which slide you want to look at. No, we see it blank.
So you can see my screen. Wow. Okay, so I'll stop sharing. and then you can do that for me. Is that fine?
Okay, good now.
Okay, so the Nigerian market, basically, it's one of the fastest growing, like I earlier mentioned, and a lot of attention is focusing on renewable energy technologies. So we have Nigerian government accessing funding from the World Bank, from African Development Bank, and we have several of the project developers around the world becoming very interested in the market. We've also seen how during the COVID, the pandemic period, how renewable energy has shown the opportunity to quickly be deployed and scale. So we have health facilities, primary centers quickly adopting solar power, and then making it a very strong business case. Now, the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, of which I'm a member and the president, was incorporated in 2016. Like I earlier mentioned, we have over 110 members currently. We are across about 5 technologies. We have solar, we have biomass, we have wind, and we have small hydro, and then we're exploring geothermal. The vision is to support the Nigerian energy mix plan by ensuring that renewable energy contributes 40% of the energy mix by 2030. Next slide, please. So the operational structure of the association is, so RIAN is one of the most structured, very strong corporate governance. We have the board of trustees, the advisory board, the executive committee, the secretariat, and then we have working groups around areas that we want to make some changes. So including partnership and finance, we have ecosystem development, policy and advocacy, and also a special working group for mini grids. Next slide, please. I would also like to mention here that Nigeria has some very strong partnership. I actually have an updated slide, but I'll make do with this. So we have, for example, Solar Power Europe, part of our partners that we do, operations with. We have a BSW. Thanks to David also for the presentation. It's a BSW to partner in Nigeria. We have the likes of Gogla, for example. We have Power for All. We have Power Africa. We have AHK, the German business platform. We have Solar Plaza, for example, and we do events together in Nigeria. So basically trying to see how we can develop the sector in Nigeria. Let me run through this last slide, and then I'll close with it. So the market is arguably one of the largest in Sub-Saharan Africa. We have seen government showing some political will to support the development of renewable energy in Nigeria, particularly solar. For example, recently the government rolled out what is called the Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan, and there's a strategy to deploy 5 million solar home systems across Nigeria, and also some mini grids. Government is providing the funding, and private sector will access those funds and then roll out solutions. So we've also seen the mini grid policy framework that has been in place. It's been seen as one of the most robust in the region, and it's encouraging private sector developers to come into the space to develop mini grids. We're hoping very shortly that the grid-tied solar also will be taken very seriously, and then we begin to have bidding processes instead of the last agreement that was just signed with 14 IPPs that is still trying to find financial close. So the challenges and the opportunities that we see is basically on the area of policy and advocacy, so partnerships with regional association and also members who are attending this event. Access to finance is one of the challenges. I've also had that mentioned earlier by a presenter. It also applies to Nigeria. So finance across the value chain, both for project development, for consumer lending, consumer finance, and the rest. Quality standard is also an area, and we've done some work with Gogla to see how we can improve that in Nigeria. Incentives is also still absent. So we're asking for a VAT exemption, custom duty waivers to encourage deployment of this technology in Nigeria. Local content is being promoted strongly by Nigeria. So there's an opportunity for companies to set up local manufacturing. For example, we've seen companies doing solar panels already, battery manufacturing, and the rest is also encouraged. Capacity building and membership management is also one key area that we're interested in. I would like to stop at this point, but clearly to show that Nigerian market is one of the fastest growing. We've seen government showing some commitments to support the private sector and also investors to come into this space. At the panel session, I'll be happy to take any question that arises. Thank you.
Thank you, Segun. The next presentation is from Ghana. Enoch Agyepong is the director of the Renewable Energy Association of Ghana. Enoch, is your presentation ready?
My presentation is ready. Can you?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm going to share now. Also, hold on. Right. So, good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, anywhere. I hope you can hear me quite clearly.
Yes, we can. We can hear you and we can see your presentation.
Okay. So, thanks for all the earlier conversations and earlier discussions. I think it's well up that we are having this conversation at the time when we all know that there's the need. So, the market landscape has gone through a lot of challenges, ups and downs. Got into the stage where really all our concentrated effort would help forward. So on that note, for me, talking about Ghana, extended a bit audience, thinking right after my brother from Nigeria, it's more Ghana being the South Africa, and then hoping to scale it. For those who do not know where Ghana is, we are located towards the on the west side of the African map, and you would experience a lot of warmth when you come here, and the warmth is also due to the tropical zone. Ghana energy sector policy goal of being able to ensure that we consistently provide competitively priced energy, universally accessible and readily available in an environmentally sustainable manner for local markets and export. So with that, at this Global Solar Council Virtual Forum 2020, it's interesting to highlight on the Ghana power sector. Ghana, as it stands, has a population of about 30 and 85% installed capacity as of 2019 is 5,172 megawatts, but we have a current peak of 2,100. So about an excess capacity that we are saddled with. But outside of that, we have a that is unbundled. So you have both the generation side by the Volta River Authority, you have the transmission side by the Grid Company Limited, Ghana Grid Company Limited, and the distribution is primarily that for the starting zone by the Electricity Company of Ghana, and then by the Northern Distribution. Ghana has two regulators. One regulator, that's the PRC, and the TEMCA regulator, that's the Energy Commission. For all of those as well, you're talking about having RE in the mix where, particularly including large hydro, you're talking about 1,600 megawatts. So in average, you're talking about 31% of that. But usually what we try to do is that the quote will go down. We take it out of the calculation, so we are able to see exactly what we have as more renewable energy generation into the mix, which is about 1.5. But in general as well, if you look at all the stats that are provided there, you realize that large PV plants are one or two of them averaging about 22 megawatts, and then you have the small scale systems, wind and standalone type, at about point to the biomass and trees as well. So in general, specifically for the renewable energy landscape, you're talking about the fact that we consider it to be one of the important mix into the energy supply in general, but particularly our early development has been guided.
Enoch,
so just
can
like
I,
all the other countries
can I interrupt
and all
you
the
again?
that are happening. Yes.
And I know you wrote to us and you said that you didn't have good connection because of the poor weather. I think if I present your slides, then maybe we can hear you a bit better because your voice isn't quite clear enough. So we can see your. Yes, I think if you stop sharing, then maybe we can use your connection to have your voice, and I'll present the slide for you. Okay.
I think that would be great. That would be
okay. So your voice was a little disturbed, so I think it's probably better if we do like that.
Enoch, are you still there? Keith, can I ask you to stop sharing? Thank you.
Okay, you can carry on. We're on the side where you were before, so please.
Enoch, are you still there?
Sorry, can you see me?
We're struggling. You keep breaking out, and we can't see you.
Sorry, is it better now? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Maybe switch off your video and so we can get your voice so you can go through the slides.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so if you can hear me, I was speaking to the fact that the Act is what the development of Ghana. So when the Act was being drafted and the law in the late 2008, the biggest obstacle that was realized was the high cost of the go. I can speak to it better than. So, I can't see.
Enoch, you back?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see me or if you can hear, but I'm just going to speak to it. So in Ghana, we have the okay, great. The feeding scheme was set to ensure, and I was shocked to understand that in Zambia they had a 3 US kilowatt hour because when we had our first bidding conducted by the Ministry of Energy, that had a yield 4.7. So literally high at that time. But then again, you'd realize that later on when we had the BUI tender in 2000, that was 8. We had then considered the conventional plants were adding about 13 to 15 kilowatts, and then we realized that we had a high. So in all, it was the fact that these had to be amended from the Renewable Energy Act amendments to
I'm extremely sorry to do this,
but also more
breaking out. So I'm gonna ask that we pause your presentation. We'll make the slides available to the participants, but it's extremely difficult to hear you. So I'm gonna have to move on. I do apologize again for that. Hopefully if you get a better connection a little bit later in the session, we can bring you back. But I'm gonna move on to the next speaker, Prosper Magaly. Prosper Magaly is the Vice President of the Tanzania Solar Energy Association. Prosper, is your presentation ready?
Yes.
Please, can you share your screen?
Let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen, please? I believe you are able to see my screen.
Yes, we are, and we can hear you clearly. Thank you, Prosper.
All right. So thank you so much for Global Solar Council and all the partners for having us to just give a highlight of the Tanzanian and the other supporting mechanisms. As introduced, I'm Prosper Magaly, Vice Chairperson of Tanzania Renewable Energy Association. But I have another hat as I'm also sitting on the board of the Alliance for Rural Electrification. So I'll just quickly give you some key statistics from Tanzania, where we have a population of about 55 million now. With the current ambitious program of grid expansion, we have managed to reach over 80% electricity access, with renewable energy and in particular solar contributing a bit of that. So the government has a target of reaching access of 100% by 2030, with a connectivity of 75% by 2030. Speaking of the electricity or energy mix, we have an installed capacity of 1,600 megawatts. About 60% of that is coming from natural gas, while about 35% coming from hydro, and the remaining 5% is a mix of thermal power generations, together with very little contribution, less than 1% of renewable energies. So we have very little targets for renewable energy. So the government has only set a target of 5%, contribution by renewable energies by 2040. We are really pushing the sector to increase these targets. But the government itself has two renewable energy projects. One is a 150 megawatt solar project, together with the 200 megawatt wind projects, which are now under evaluation, and they will all be implemented by the private sector. So this is a very good indication that the government also is in line to support renewable energy activities in Tanzania. So some glimpse of the regulatory framework in Tanzania. So we have the energy policy, the national energy policy since 2005, and it was amended in 2015 to add some other, in particular, renewable energy technologies. We have the ministry, which is really supportive of the sector and is giving support, or if you need to implement any project in Tanzania, so the ministry will give you the support letter. We have the regulator, EWURA, the Energy and Water Regulatory Authority, which is also regulating the electricity sector since 2001. The Electricity Act of 2008 gave room for private sector to also come aboard to implement electricity generation projects. And we have, together with the Act, there are small power projects rules going together with the Act, where it gives some exemptions and incentives. An example is for all projects, small projects below 1 megawatt, they don't need to undergo cumbersome licensing processes. So they only need to get registered. We have the Rural Energy Agency and the Rural Energy Fund since 2005, which gives incentives to rural electrification projects. We are also very keen on the standards, and already solar PV together with the mini grid standards have already been gazetted, and we are really glad that our association is leading the solar standard committee. So on environmental issues, we have the National Environmental Management Council also giving up environmental approvals for projects. Of recent, there has been a very huge development to even some of these approvals for environmental impact assessment, such that if you are doing a small project, you don't need to do a full-fledged environmental impact assessment, but there's a checklist prepared. So if you are implementing a small project, you just go through a checklist, and then the environmental impact assessment permit is granted to your project. So together with all these rules and active environment, there has been a number of challenges, in particular in enforcing some of these rules. And of recent, the government has been giving statements which are contrary to the rules. But as a sector and in particular as an association, we are really advocating for few of these challenges and we believe that with good understanding with the government, then we are going to be in line with the government. So in general, the environment for Tanzania is quite good. The government is really supportive, and we really welcome project developers and investors who want to come and invest in renewable energy projects. This is a very good market for them to come and invest. So that was all, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Prosper, and for keeping your presentation on time. I see we have exactly 5 minutes left for this session. A number of my panelists have left, some due to bad connections. But before I hand over to Gianni to close out today's program, maybe just one final remark from each of you, please. 30 seconds. We've got literally 4 minutes left. So 30 seconds, just a final remark on what do you want participants to take away from the session from you in your country. And we're going to start with Isaiah again from Zimbabwe.
Thanks, Nivesh. Basically, we want the participants to take away the fact that Zimbabwe is an investment destination. We have embraced renewable energy. You can come through and talk to the association, which represents the private sector. We can also help you in navigating the terrain. We have been working together with government to try and make sure that the uptake is improved. There are incentives at hand for big projects, and we hope you can come to Zimbabwe. We have the best solar array on the Southern African continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. I'm going to move on. Ricardo, just in time, can I have a quick 30-second closing remark?
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes.
All right. So thank you very much. I think these platforms do significantly help us to connect, to discuss the issues. I think it's been said and it's been touted as Africa is going to be the next frontier, and I think it's time that these and I think Michael Keyser said it before. This song has been sang a number of times, so I think it's time that we take the theory and put it into practice. And I guess the platforms are here, and I think we can say that Africa is open for business. And I do hope that we get off the ground and there's liftoff for our renewable energy markets and for solar specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Well said. Geoffrey, if we can get your closing remark.
Yes, please. For Zambia, for large-scale solar power plants, and we're also moving very swiftly into off-grid mini-grids and commercial and industrial solar. But the key thing that is being emphasized here in Zambia is that outside investors who are coming to invest in the solar subsector, it's a requirement that you partner with local companies, indigenous companies that are run by Zambia, so that we all move together. And it's not a case of investors come and when they leave, we're back to square one. So going forward, what we're looking for is partnerships and not investors coming here to implement their own projects and leaving out the indigenous companies that are supposed to be moving forward together with the advancement in the technology. I think that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoffrey. I think that applies to all African countries across the board. I'm going to move on to Segun.
All right, thank you so much.
Segun,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I want to say thank you to the organizers of Global Solar Council. It's been an exciting two-day event, a lot of lessons learned. I also want to thank everyone that's joined and listened to presentations. Definitely, Africa is the next frontier. and also know particularly Nigeria is a big market that all interested investors should take a look at. Policies have been developed, government is showing political will, and then I'm also seeing collaborations within the region, as for example, between regional associations in West Africa, Southern Africa, to also make things happen in here.
Thank you, Segun. Enoch, is your reception any better?
I'm just hoping it is. So I'm just going to be very fast on this and hoping everyone can hear it. Unfortunately, as we all know, Africa has a lot of potentials, but many times the potentials are not. I believe that in the technologies, we can look at the energy side and see the kind of impact that we make. So from all actors, private sector, governments, let's look at stronger collaborations. Let's indeed making and not leaving anyone behind, like the whole idea of the Sustainable Development Goals are. And let's make sure that we really speak and then do what we say we would. Service. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Enoch. Prosper, I'm going to ask you to close it out, please. Take us home. We've got 30 seconds. We're already 2 minutes over.
Thank you, Navishan. I think, first of all, as African Renewable Energy Associations, we really have a lot to learn from each other. There are a lot of experiences from different African markets. So we really need to work together to learn from each other before even we learn from outside Africa. We also really need to push for local companies, indigenous companies to also come aboard to implement these projects which are being implemented in the African soil. So I think that is my huge takeaway from these 2 days meetings.
Thank you very much, Prosper. I do have a number of topics that I would have loved to discuss with each and every one of you. I think there is time for us to open this chapter under the Global Solar Council and have these discussions within the African region and within the African countries and talk to each other more so we learn from each other and we do what's best for the African people while still learning from those countries who have walked this path before us. So we are very grateful to all of the partners from Global Solar Council. Thank you to the team who has put together the amazing 2 days of presentations and speeches. A special thank you to Gianni and Kun and the rest of the team who have done an amazing job in getting these discussions underway, and we look forward to taking it forward. Thank you very much.
Niveshan,
I'm going to hand over to Gianni,
yes, Niveshan,
who's the chairperson, who's going to close out.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you all to stay on the scene and with the video open, so for a group photo as well, and in the conclusion. And I'd like to conclude with all of you anyway join, and if you manage to also to come live. And I think it's been really a 2 days great event, so complementary, because also yesterday we did talk about, of course, also remote locations. We have been talking about, of course, solar and the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And anyway, let's say solar not only as an opportunity to combating climate change, but an opportunity for people and prosperity, and alleviate poverty, and also give electricity, as also the presentation from UNDP to 800 million that are not or are today without electricity. And of course, as was mentioned also from UNDP, 300 million children that they attend schools without electricity. So it's very, very important. And so there is a complementarity also. Yes, there was also Gogla, but there is a real complementarity to what was said today. One of the key emerging market of Global Solar Council we have been listening a lot of good presentation from, of course, the Center of Excellence that representing a lot of governments and regions. We have been listening, of course, to the best practice from Solar Power Europe that I do thank also for the cooperation in this event, and of course from BSW and David with his report as well. And thank you anyway, Mate, and thank you, Nevi, for your great cooperation and moderation. And I have to say that a lot of contents on policy, on markets, on best practices, on political insights, on overview on energy, and so I think there is a lot. There are a lot of contents that we will try to disseminate with these records, with the presentation also after this event. But what is more important, I'd like to conclude this event that Global Solar Council has approved. The board a few weeks ago has approved a task force on Africa, which is very important. So this means that all the speakers of today and of maybe others are invited to join the task force. The task force has two coordinators. One is Niveshan, has been approved, of course, and there is a room for another coordinator next to support Niveshan in this task force. And of course, I invite all of you to candidate anyway to the board to be at least the coordinator of this task force. The task force that has anyway a lot of target, of course, on one side to facilitate and support cooperation among existing country association, existing countries, support countries without an industry association, and of course to attract investors, to your countries. So this is very, very important, and I think it's very important for all of you. And so in Global Solar Council, anyway, together with Latin America, with Southeast Asia, we have also Africa. So three important task forces were really to focus on. So I think is very important that we could this meeting of today is just the starting point of our cooperation, and so we will benefit and we will really utilize as much as we can the content that you have been presenting today, the presentations and the effort that you did all today and also yesterday for the audience that could not, the possible anyway audience that anyway could not listen today, but will go through, of course, all the other channels in the after this event, YouTube, etc. So I invite you, of course, to stay a little bit more if you can for visiting the virtual expo for networking. Is very interesting because the networking as a casual organize casual meetings between all of you, and for a final anyway, maybe for encouraging of cooperation and with a timer. So it's very, very nice way of meeting also after this event. So thank you very much. I have to thanks a lot the team, the organization team, Kuhn, Chun, James, Gabriel, Cecilia, and again Solar Power Europe, and the great job for this event that, as Jose said this morning very well, this will be the first of a series, and as Jose said, anyway, Africa remain one of our key focus also for the future. So thank you very much, and see you very soon. Thank you, Niveshan, and all of you. Bye.